We're going to complete Chapter 4 with membranes. Here are the three types of membranes in the body. Cutaneous membrane is your skin, which is epithelial tissue on the surface. Deep to that we'll have dense irregular connective tissue, which is the dermis, making up the membrane we call the skin or cutaneous membrane. Mucous membranes don't necessarily secrete mucus, but most do. They line the body cavities that are open to the outside, like your respiratory system or digestive system, urinary, and reproductive systems. Serous membranes we've already covered. These are the double-layered membranes that have a visceral and parietal layer with serous fluid flowing between them that cover your heart, lungs, and many abdominal pelvic organs. So let's see these three membranes real quickly. Very simply, the two layers that form your skin make up the cutaneous membrane. The membrane that line your tracts that have access to the outside, like your digestive and respiratory tracts, also your urinary and reproductive tracts, these are called mucous membranes. You may recall our three serous membranes: the pericardium, the pleura, and the peritoneum. There's a visceral and parietal pericardium, which surrounds the heart, a visceral and parietal pleura surrounding each lung, and a visceral and parietal peritoneum surrounding many abdominal pelvic organs. Also recall that between the visceral and parietal layer in each serous membrane, we have serous fluid to lessen the friction between the organs as they move against each other. Our last Chapter 4 topic is on tissue repair. When tissue gets injured, there are two ways it can repair itself. If it regenerates, that means the healed tissue is exactly the same as the tissue before it was injured. Fibrosis means that the tissue is repaired, but it's not the same anymore. It's less flexible, actually stronger, but doesn't move around as easily. Here we see injured tissue that affected the epithelial tissue up top and affected deeper connective tissue as well. The first stage is inflammation. We have severed blood vessels, which cause chemicals to go to the capillaries and allow the capillaries to become more permeable, so these infection and fighting and other white blood cells can leave the capillaries to the injured area. Clotting will occur as platelets seal the injured blood vessels, which eventually forms a scab as it dries. The clot is replaced by what we call granulation tissue. These blood vessels are restored. They're connected again. Blood vessels can do that very easily. And then the fibroblasts, these cells, start producing collagen, like a suture, to repair the area. We have cells called macrophages, which are large cells that perform phagocytosis to clean up all the debris in the area. And then the epithelial cells do what they do best. They start undergoing mitosis. Cells divide, which start replacing the scab area in the epithelial tissue. In the last step, we get regeneration mostly in the epithelial tissue because of the high turnover rate of cells going through mitosis. But in the deeper tissue, we get fibrosis. This fibrosed area is joined together by collagen, which is tough protein. Therefore, this area is stronger than it used to be, but it doesn't have as much mobility. Sometimes we call that scar tissue. Here are the key points of fibrosis. This happens in an area that can't regenerate. Fibrous tissue or scar tissue replaces the damaged tissue. It's strong, but it lacks flexibility, so it can't function like the normal tissue. So at the top of this slide, we have the types of tissue that can regenerate the quickest. At the bottom of the slide, we have tissue that cannot regenerate at all. So think of your epithelial tissue, your coverings and linings. The cells that make up this tissue constantly go through mitosis, so they will regenerate very well and relatively quickly, along with some other types of connective tissue. At the other end of the spectrum, heart or cardiac muscle and your nervous tissue cannot regenerate. Everything else kind of falls in between, where it can regenerate, but it will take a lot longer than epithelial tissue.